Greater St. Albert Catholic Schools Board of Trustees is honored to celebrate, together with our staff community, the 2020 recipient of the Laura Bird Memorial Beacon of Hope Award. The biggest difference that Catholic education makes for its students is the capacity for our staff to model and witness the life of Jesus Christ in every relationship and everything that is part of teaching and learning. And for this reason, your Board of Trustees believes that it is important to celebrate and honor how staff learn from each other to make such a difference. Our desire to annually identify a great example of selfless Christian service from someone who works among us. Mrs. Laura Bird, a teacher in St. Albert in the 1960s and early 70s, was passionate about prioritizing service to students in the area of special needs education. At that time, the only option for St. Albert families who needed special education supports was to have their children bused into Edmonton. Through Mrs. Bird's pioneering work, special education started its gradual evolution to the inclusive, diverse, learner-based model that our division strongly supports today. In 1960, Mrs. Bird initiated the establishment of an opportunity room, which was opened within Vattel Grandin School. As a teacher within this program, Laura Bird's efforts gave hope to her students and their families that an environment dedicated to addressing a broad spectrum of learning needs could be established in a school community. Mrs. Bird's initiative enabled our schools to learn that students best realize their God-given potential within a community where they are known, loved, cared for, and nurtured by all community members. I am honored to benefit from the thorough and thoughtful submission of teachers Bianca Cimino and Alyssa Frew to support the awarding of this year's recipient, Mrs. Mary Richard. Yes. Preach the gospel at all times. When necessary, use words. This famous quote by St. Francis of Assisi is an excellent descriptor of Mary Richard's life. A typical school day at École Notre Dame begins with children arriving and heading to the playground to play while they wait for the school bell to ring. There, you will find Mary greeting all the children, parents, and staff with not necessarily words, but rather the biggest heartwarming smile. If you have not seen Mary smile, we'll get her to give you one before you know that it is infectious. Her eyes light up, she sends unconditional love through her gaze, and those in her presence feel acknowledged and uplifted. Mary exudes love for life and for people, all people. Her example of starting each day with joy and connection to others in our schools sets the tone for so many to enter their school days with happiness in their hearts. After reading the description and eligibility of the Laura Bird Memorial Beacon of Hope Award, we know that Mary Richard, counselor and teacher at École Notre Dame, encompasses all that this prestigious award signifies. Mary is an individual who clearly demonstrates and displays Christ's teaching while living out her vocation. Here's a few examples why. Mary has an incredible place that she uses in École Notre Dame to support students and staff. We would probably recognize it as her office. It's incredible because she creates a sacred space where people can retreat with prayerful placement of items and meaningful rituals. In her office, Mary welcomes a steady stream of students throughout the day, and students love coming to have their time with Mrs. Richard. After school, you might also find a staff member or two arriving to cool off, as she calls it, and being offered cold, sparkling water from her mini fridge. As we transitioned to virtual learning last year, Mary continued to encourage staff members to drop by her virtual office, to take a break, to chat, or to just relax. Mary also continued to keep in touch with students with whom she frequently connected. The children were immediately met with the same glowing smile that they would see at school, and they enjoyed making connections with Mary and experiencing nature and much more through Google Meets with Mrs. Richard. Mary senses hotspots around the school or hears about them from the staff or the students. And while we do not know all that Mary's counseling work entails, we know she is professional and effective because we witness the transformation that occurs as a result of her effective counseling. Mary even works classroom circles into her office schedule. This is a time for whole classes to attend with their teachers to experience a spiritual counseling retreat in her office. Mary has collected a number of prayer items from many cultures that she uses in classroom circles, including a Tibetan prayer bowl, an indigenous talking stick, special rocks, candles, and crosses with artwork, just to name a few. Children are in awe of her and are captivated by this sacred time that they are able to share in classroom circles. Mary has readily answered the call to work with children who exhibit difficult behaviors, carry side stories, and are tangled in issues that do not solve quickly or easily. She has never grown tired or weary from this. Rather, she has drawn strength from her faith and prayer. Mary is astute to life's problems in others and has the wisdom to not solve others' problems, but to embrace troubled little ones in Jesus' love, where he can be the ultimate healer. Mary is passionate about suicide prevention, healing trauma, and providing safe spaces for children in need. What is remarkable about Mary is how many children and staff she ministers to. Once a teacher was experiencing a challenging time in her personal life, and Mary, knowing this teacher's love of old books, left a beautiful vintage prayer book with an encouraging note on this teacher's desk for her to find upon her arrival at school first thing in the morning. This kind of action demonstrates Mary's wise choice to guide the person back to Jesus as a fix to the situation. Probably the best way to view how Mary sees herself in her own challenging job is to read her own description of it. Last Christmas, an outpouring of her love from the students that she works with was expressed in a beautifully written piece about the power of a counselor's office. Mary was encouraged to share her piece with the school division, which she humbly did after much arm twisting and encouragement. The reflection is entitled The Womb of Compassion, a metaphor and spiritually rich tribute to the birth of Christ, resonating with all of our vocational journeys. When Mary prays with her students, as she regularly is asked during the assemblies and celebrations, the 500 plus young K-4 students at École Notre Dame are suddenly calm, soothed, engaged, and praying. Indeed, Mary has a gift for praying with children. Her voice, her truthful intentions, her delivery, and her words bring young ones' hearts and minds to a place where they can connect with God in prayer. It's not surprising that Mary's favorite subject to teach is religion. Bringing the little ones to Jesus is an amazing gift that Mary does every day. Outside her professional life, Mary lives humbly. She loves nature and regularly shares with her school community about her walks, her cats, her previous British Columbia adventures, and the joy that she finds in spending time with loved ones. Mary continues her love of Mass and prayer. In fact, in her previous vocation, she was called to live a religious life as a nun, and glows when she tells about being a young, active, tennis-playing nun who never let people win against her. And she has remained a competitive force to be reckoned with. Mary will go to battle for those in her care. She has described her role as the lovely tornado, which means that while chaos is flying all around her, she is able to be the calm inside the center. This grounding can only occur because of the strong base and love that Mary has as a faithful follower and example of our Lord. Greater St. Albert Catholic Schools is blessed to have Mary Richard as a Christ-centered example working among its staff and students. Students, blessed with a direct sense of honesty, can often sum up best the impact of people living among them. To that end, and in closing, I draw attention to a time when one of Mary's colleagues asked the students to explain what a saint is. A student who had been seeing Mrs. Richard regularly for counseling throughout the year raised a hand with great enthusiasm. It was not a regular occurrence for this child to speak in front of the class, so the class paused intently to hear what would be said next. The young student said, "So basically we can call Mrs. Richard a saint when she dies because she is so holy, we know she will go straight to heaven." This child convinced every other student in the class, which was made obvious by everyone nodding in agreement. Mary Richard knows the gospel well, but she does not solely preach it in words. Instead, her daily loving actions are recognized and modeled by our students. Mary Richard is indeed a good and faithful servant, a beacon of hope for all with whom she interacts and for others who work and learn around her. Greater St. Albert Catholic School Division staff, please join me in congratulating the 2020 recipient of the Laura Bird Memorial Beacon of Hope Award, Mrs. Mary Richard.
Well, hello. I am so humbled to accept this award today. I was hoping some of the Bird family would be here because my mother-in-law, Dorothy, she taught with Mrs. Bird. And I phoned her up, and Dorothy's 93, and some days she's with it, and some days she's not. But on this day, she was clear as a bell. And I said, "Mom, do you remember Laura Bird?" She went, "You mean Mrs. Bird?" I went, "Yes." "Oh, she's my dear friend, but Mary, she died." I said, "I know, Mom, but what was she like as a teacher?" And my mom said, "Well," and she paused, "she was sincere." And I went, "What do you mean by that?" "Oh, she loved those kids, Mary. She really loved them." So I just thought it was a beautiful little touch that's kind of in the family. I have two short stories to tell because I love to tell stories. Sadly, but more importantly, joyfully, my mom died early this summer. And my brothers and I were gathering around, and we knew she was finally with God, and it was truly a good, happy death. And we were writing her obituary, all of us. And we were joking and laughing, and we came up with, I thought, something pretty great. And then in the morning, my sister-in-law, who's a director of religious education and medicine hat, we thought we better give it a little proofread. And we read it, and it said, Mom worked as a nurse for 30, 40 years. And I went, wait a minute. She didn't nurse, she ministered. And my sister-in-law said, yeah, she ministered. So we scribbled it out and put in ministered on top of the word worked. Well, then my hippie brother, biologist, atheist, I don't think he is, but he thinks he is, a brother came up out of bed and he read it and he said, what's this? I said, what? Ministered. That's not even a word. I said, what do you mean? We all minister. Mom ministered, I minister every day. No, that's not a word. You're looking through your, and I love this, twisted Catholic theological lens. And I went, whoa, that's pretty nice. I took that as a compliment. And so I thought, I'm going to change the word twisted to informed, prayerful, choiceful, intentional Catholic lens. And we get to do that every day. How cool is that? So I thank my brother for his compliment. And we did put it in against his will because it was 2-1. And so when I was thinking about this award and myself, I believe that the essence of life is relationship and informed, intentional relationship in the context of community. And while we get to do that in our school, we get to minister in an informed Catholic community. And we get to love and we get to serve. And sometimes we get to do big things. Sometimes we just show up. And I think sometimes just showing up and being present is how we bring God, Jesus, to each other. And so as we go forth this year to minister, maybe you want to use that word twisted. I kind of like it. Let's be twisted Catholic ministers and touch those kids, touch our staff. And I know it's a real hard time right now, but I think we need to remember the word joy. I was talking to my principal, Ryan, and he said, how are we going to find joy this year? And I said, you know what? We need to intentionally create it. And so as we go forth to minister, let's do it joyfully. Thank you.